Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we check out the brand new DLC for Outriders Worldslayer. Welcome back guys, like I said, we are going to be checking out the new Worldslayer DLC for Outriders. Before we jump into the video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new. We got all kinds of gaming reviews going on this channel, and you guys want to be up to date on that. So this new Worldslayer DLC, it takes place right after the base game in Outriders. You find out that the anomaly that was taking place in the first game is getting much bigger than we thought possible, and it's threatening to pretty much kill everybody on planet Enoch. You and the scientists discover that there's like this small pocket within the anomaly that, if you guys can get to it, could be safe, but at the same time that means that you have to actually team up with the main enemies from like the first game. So you introduce this new girl, I'm gonna butcher her name, Erishkagul. I probably butchered it, but she is the actual leader of this these people that they basically been having a war since the main character wakes up from the cryo sleep or whatever it is from the first game. And the only way to get into this pocket dimension is if both sides stop fighting, come together and work together. The story is like fairly simple. It's not super in depth. I mean, if you guys have played the first game, it's pretty much the same. I for one actually enjoy the story, although the dialogue and some of the stuff was cheesy, and it is here too. It is got some cheesiness to it, but overall like the story is not bad. For me, the story for the DLC just totally seemed rushed. The actual like main campaign, there's about 6 missions, and for me it took me about 4 or 5 hours to complete, and I was going pretty slow, checking every nook and cranny for the chests and for the resource materials that you can grind off the wall. But for the most part, I think people would pound this through in probably about 3 to 5 hours, I would say, to be safe. But as far as like story content goes, it just felt really rushed. It didn't have time to, like, the stakes are the anomaly's gonna kill everybody, and I just felt like it was so rushed that you didn't have time to kind of sit back and just like realize the gravity of the situation. It was just going from one crazy packed area to the next area to the next area. It was very action, kill all these enemies, fight. So there was no real time, like downtime. Hopefully I'm conveying that right, but there's like no time to kind of sit back and kind of realize what is going on and realize the gravity of the situation. Also, one of the things that, because of the story being so rushed, at least I feel like, that the new villain, Erishkagul, like I said, gonna butcher her name again, the main villain, she's on the picture of the Worldslayer DLC cover or whatever you want to call it, and she was super cool and super awesome, but unfortunately because the story went by so fast, I felt like we didn't have enough time to develop her character and to really get into like what she is, why she's the leader. We just kind of know that she's one of the first altered, and that's pretty much it. And so like when you fight her, there's not really any tension or anything like that. You just kind of beat her, and it's a fun boss fight. Don't get me wrong, boss fight was fun, but it's just like there was no stakes. I didn't feel like there was really anything because we didn't really know who this chick was, and so that was kind of a setback for me. It's just the whole game pacing wise just felt really rushed. Although it was fun, story wise it felt rushed. A lot of the combat in this game is exactly the same as the base game Outriders, so if you guys enjoyed the base game, this is definitely going to be something that you'll enjoy. I for one, like I said, I enjoyed the story, even though it wasn't very good. I mean, it was I would say medium, is right there in the middle, but the combat was always really fun. I loved the gunplay, I love all the abilities, and that is the exact same here as in there, except for here I feel like they build upon it because they throw in a bunch of mods, they throw in a few new enemies. Like obviously you fight a lot of the standard enemies, the humanoid enemies, and then you fight a lot of the alien creatures are the same, but they do throw in quite a few new enemies. Like there's these ones that are like can turn invisible that you fight towards the end. I think that's end game content anyway, but regardless, it's there and it was really fun. I think that the Worldslayer DLC took all of the stuff that was really good and really well done in the base game and basically just amplified it and put it in this DLC, because like I said, the gunplay is fun, the loot is 1,000 times better in this DLC than it was in the base game, and I thought the base game was alright, but here since I haven't played the game since when it first came out. I know that there was like a New Horizon update. I didn't even bother with it because when I looked at it, there wasn't really much added. Here, they add a ton more weapons. They add a ton more legendaries. I personally feel like that the legendary drop rate is increased a lot from even the base game. The base game, when I ended the game and had the credits rolled, I even did a lot of the end game stuff. I think I ended with maybe like 4 or 5 legendary items, and just in this little tiny, Worldslayer DLC that's just a couple hours long, I ended up with like 10 legendary weapons, or, well, I shouldn't say just weapons, 10 legendary items, whether it's weapons or whether it's gear, like a helmet, chest piece, glove, boots, that kind of thing. And on top of that, a lot of the just regular weapons look freaking cool. They look like that they would be legendary weapons, and that was one of the things is that I didn't like too much about the base game, is that like you kind of got just like your random standard military looking weapons, like your SMGs look like SMGs, and it was always the legendary ones that got like the bone looking ones and have like ice frost on them, and now you have like just regular standard enemies that are not enemies, sorry, regular weapons that aren't legendaries looking just as cool. And that is one thing that I feel like that the Outriders DLC really nails here, is that the loot actually is cool. And out of all the looter shooters that are out right now, like, the only one that's really coming to my mind is Tiny Tina. And I personally didn't think Tiny Tina was all that good. I thought it was very borderline, and that loot there was pretty not good. I really didn't like the loot in Tiny Tina. Here, combat and the gunplay is just as fun, but the loot is good. It actually makes me want to go out and like play these different levels and try to get better loot. One of the cool things that they also added along with the more weapons is that they have this transmog system, which is so cool. I've seen it in a lot of other games. I know Destiny's got it and a few others, where you can take your normal weapon, and as long as you've gotten it at some point during the game, even if it's not a very good weapon, you can transmog it, go into the settings, and change the way that the weapon looks. You can change your weapons, you can change your gear, which is really cool, because there's sometimes where I got like a better, let's just say like I got a helmet, and the helmet that I have, or I got a new helmet, and that helmet was better than the one that I had, but I don't like the way the helmet looked, because there's some, there's some weapons and there's some armor pieces that I'm just like, doesn't look all that cool, but it's got really great stats, and it's got like the build that I'm going for, and so I really like that they gave you that ability that you can swap the way it looks but keep all the same stats. So that was really fun. I did that a lot with the weapons, where I got a certain weapon that was just super awesome, but it wasn't a legendary weapon, but I can swap it to make it look like that cool legendary weapon but still keep the same damage that it had and same clip size, all that stuff. It's just changing the skin on it, which was awesome. I freaking loved it. I think I had transmog on literally every piece of armor set and almost every weapon. Like, I loved it a lot. Speaking of weapons, they added a new type of weapon, or I should say rarity of weapon. They call them apocalyptic weapons. Basically, you can have the same rarity as the ultra rare or legendaries, but now they have like a skull kind of in the background of them, which makes them have a third mod slot, and that like totally changes up almost everything about my build. For me personally, I was running anomaly power, so I tried to get as many mods on my gear, many mods on my weapon that would give me more anomaly power, or just do as much destructive power as I could. I ran the trickster, so my main ones that I used was the temporal blade, because my temporal blade, with all the mods that I had for my weapons and my gear, just wrecked things. I would literally almost one-shot some of the elites. Not close, but they got like the 2 health bars, and I can literally with just one swipe of my anomaly blade almost just instant kill, like especially like standard enemies, just instant kill everything. Now with these apocalyptic weapons, you can now have that third mod slot on your weapons and your gear, and I thought that was super cool. As we're on the topic of apocalyptic, they now have this new tier system with this DLC. And it's almost like the other ones where you can change like the difficulty settings, but these ones go up to 40, and they have their own bonus rewards with them as well, with their all challenges and whatnot like that. That was also really fun, because now when you unlock these new apocalyptic tiers, you get these upgrade points that you can upgrade, and you basically have a second skill tree. You can diverge in 2 other paths, giving more stat bonuses. So that, and on top of that, you can totally get rid of all of your points and stock them in whatever one you wanted. So if you went a different way and you're like, I want to try the Harbinger instead of the whatever, you know, the Elitist, or I'm drawing a blank on the names here, but I'll have them up here on screen somewhere. But you can swap them now and totally respec, and I love that. I love that it invites you to kind of mix and match with mods, with weapons, to try to get the best build you possibly can to do as much damage. And I actually played with that quite a bit. I think that's probably where it took me around 5 hours to beat this, because there's so many times where I was just sitting there trying to swap out different things, and I'm like looking, I was like, oh, actually I think I would do way more damage if I did this. And it was super fun. I actually really enjoyed that. One of the things, like I said, that Outriders does absolutely better than a lot of other looter shooters out there is that the loot is awesome, and the mods and totally customizing your character. What I did is going to be vastly different from a lot of what you guys are doing, and it's awesome. I love it. I love that there's so many different possibilities to go with this. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but there are a total of 6 missions in this Worldslayer DLC. And I have to say, I actually loved every one of these levels. They were all super cool. There's like a snowy area, snowy tundra with like ice, where like literally the enemies are freezing as they're flying overhead and crashing down. And one of my personal favorites is where you're like on this port and you get up on a boat, the boat takes off, and all of a sudden like these other boats are smacking into you, these barges, and enemies are popping out. So it's like very unique from what was in the base game, where there was just like the forest and the mountains. Outriders does have a lot of the same enemies from the base game, but along with that is that they do introduce quite a few new enemies. Like I mentioned earlier, there's those ones that can go invisible, and they have quite a few new bosses, and the boss fights I particularly thought were pretty fun. Even though almost everything in the game, enemies included, are very bullet spongy. One of the first bosses that actually in the DLC is the Fisherman. It's like in a dark, dreary, rainy like port, and you're looking for this guy called the Fisherman that takes people across the island, or takes people across the sea. And this is where our main character is trying to get across the sea to locate things that can help him with this anomaly. Another piece for an obelisk to make it in this pocket dimension of the anomaly, right? And anyway, so long story short, you run into like this Fisherman, and he's like this huge dude with a yellow jacket, and he's got these 2 big old like axe blades. And I'm not gonna lie, it gave me hardcore Resident Evil vibes, but it's just the presentation was very horror-like, and I really liked that. Even though the boss fight itself wasn't too bad, it was a lot of fun. And the last boss fight, I always butcher her name, I'm just gonna call her the final boss. She was a lot of fun. I actually, like I said, I actually enjoyed most of the boss fights here. There's a few, I think there's one in at least every area, so there's 6 new bosses. They're all super fun. Going into my final thoughts of the Worldslayer DLC for Outriders, I had fun. You know, I actually enjoyed the base game, and I know it was a lot of hit or miss with people. The base game had its issues when it first came out, but overall I did enjoy my time in Outriders, especially this DLC. Like I said earlier, I feel like that the DLC took a lot of those things that the fans really loved, all the things that they really did right in the base game, and doubled down on them here, making them so much better. Like the weapons are better, just the loot that you get is just so much better than the base game, and it's just so much better than a lot of the looter shooters I've been playing recently. It was a lot of fun. I love the new mods that you can, you know, swap out, and I love the customization of this. I love the transmog. I don't know why I love it so much. Maybe it's because I was something that I was like, hey, this would be super cool if Outriders did this. It's just that like you could see Outriders has a ton of potential, and it would be crazy to see what this company can do with an even bigger budget. Like, they got the shooting down, the combat down, the weapons and loot down. Like, it'd be crazy to see what they could do with like a Destiny style budget, you know? Some of the negatives, like I said, that the game just felt really rushed. It is about a 3 to 5 hour DLC, depending on how fast you go. I wouldn't say anything longer than 5 hours unless you're really grinding for stuff. But as far as like the main story, about 3 to 5 hours. And that's kind of one of the negatives for me, is that it is about $35, and I think with tax for me it came to almost $40 on the PlayStation Store. And I felt like that's kind of a steep asking price, even though I enjoyed the DLC and I enjoyed the main game. I just feel like that it just went by really fast, it felt rushed, and it didn't feel like there was enough in there to justify the $35 asking point, or $40 asking point if you're going to include tax, I guess. So it just kind of seemed pretty steep. I just wish that there was a little bit more, you know, in the package deal, a little bit more food on the table per se, you know, for this game, for that sort of asking price. But yeah, I think it's a great looter shooter. I'm a little biased just because I actually enjoyed it. The story is not, I don't want to say bad, it's pretty average, I should say. It's not bad, but it's not necessarily super good. Overall, I would give Outriders Worldslayer DLC a 7 out of 10. I think that if you guys really enjoyed Outriders, the base game, that you'll enjoy this, and I think it's definitely worth the purchase if you enjoyed the base game. But that's going to be it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments below if you've played the new Worldslayer DLC, or even if you've played the Outriders base game. I would love to know what you guys thought. And that's going to be it for the video, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next video.